Hi everyone, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. This is Melanie and this is my midweek check-in with you on my goal that I set for myself to put away this bin of items. So you can see this bin is empty because everything is on my desk. Again, one of the reasons why I recommend having a clear desk before starting this process is it just gives you room to spread out. Now you could put these in individual bins if you want. I don't have enough to do this, so just categorizing them on the table is sufficient. I store my stamps and dies in fridge bins, and I've color coded the bins, which is built into the name on the files. So for instance, this one starts with an O, and so I know that goes in the orange bin. So these are all O stamps. These are G stamps, purple, pink, red, blue, and brown. Okay, so what I will do next is I will put these in numerical order and then go and file them in the respective bins. I'm going to pull one over so you can see what I'm talking about. Some of those items in that bin made their way over here. If you remember from last video, I only had a few items in here that needed to be inventoried and fixed, and you'll notice that I threw some other items in here. These have been inventoried, but they have not been sampled. I like to do a sampling of everything in my room so that I have a physical representation of the color. So I need to do that as well. Another task. I will show you that here shortly, but I'm going to do this first because this is easy. So this is one of those fridge bins that I store my stamps in there. I have 3, sometimes 4 different sizes. So I have DVD cases, I have the small little envelopes, and I have these standard size envelopes, and I do also have larger envelopes, but they don't fit in this double wide bin. They go in a larger bin separate from these, but they still get categorized by color, if that makes sense. They just don't end up in these bins. So the reasoning behind the coloring system is I know, for instance, that brown are sentiments and alphabets, and green is animals and nature, red is Christmas, purple is scrapbooking. You get the idea, right? So just having a color already helps me know where I want to look. Now everything is inventoried so I can go online and search for stuff, but sometimes it's just as quick to quickly flip through these and find a stamp set to use. It just depends on what mood I'm in. So I have a bunch of brown new ones. So this is 35 and 36. So I just basically go to the end and plop them in. I've got 79 and 80. So here's 78 and 79 and 80. And if this is too full, which this one is, I pull from the back. And I'm just going to pull all of these ones actually. I pull from the back and move them into the next container. Now some of my allotments are starting to get full, but I do still have space. So it's just a matter of juggling things at this point. So I would expect at some point in the near future there will be a downsizing of my stamp collection, but not right now. And we'll see. We'll see when that happens. Okay, so I'm going to put the rest of these away and then I'll come back and show you the other bin. So as I said, I like to do a sample of all the items that I'm bringing into my craft room so that I have a color source to check. I have 2-inch squares here that I'm using because these go into coin pockets. That's how I'm storing them. And basically, I'm just going to pop that in the corner, line up my stamp, and I'm going to work through all the ink pads that I have to do. I'm somebody who likes to save things up until I deem them worthy to do, so in this case I have 5 ink pads to update. I used to pre-type out all of these on the computer and then cut the squares, but to be honest, it was just taking way too much time to do that. And I felt like I had to wait until I had a full sheet, and so now I just handwrite it. It's not as neat for sure, but it does the job, and really at the end of the day that's all I care about. So I will do all the handwriting later. So what I do is I just take the ink pad and put the sample on top, and then I'll come back and write the name on it. I do the same for sprays, for paints. For paints, I just end up putting like a dab in the middle. For sprays, I take a Post-it note and mask off the bottom section and then just spray on the top. And for the embossing powder, I just take a large, round, flat glue dot, apply the embossing powder on top of it, and then heat it. So in addition to doing the little samples with the media and then the name, I also, on some of the containers, will put a sample on the top. So in this case, this is the embossing powder. I've got one for the paint, and then I also put them on the sprays. That way when they're in the container, I can't see the labels, but I can see the top, and that gives me a good indication of what is what. So I'm just going to finish writing up these labels, and then I'll show you how I file them. Okay, so what does my sample look like? I actually have this basket that fits these page protectors perfectly. These are coin pocket page protectors that have 2-inch squares in them. And I don't know if you can see this, but I've got them categorized. So for instance, I've got acrylic paint, I've got watercolor, crayons, pencils, pigment sticks, paint pens, ink pads, you name it, it is in here. So let's take out the ink pad one, and I'll show you what I do with that. And by the way, nobody should have this many ink pads. Really, it's a bit ridiculous. You'll notice on the front of this one, I have a key. I've got a heart, which indicates craft or pigment ink. If I have 1 star, that means I have the mini only. And if I have 2 stars, I have the mini and large. And if there's nothing, that means I just have the large. Hopefully that makes sense. So I have these all intermixed, and they are by color. And basically what I've done is I start with reds. I try to keep enough extra so that if I have to add, I'm not constantly shuffling the whole thing all the way around. Now we get into the oranges and peaches, and that is where I'm going to throw these in. I don't really worry too much about it being in like from lightest to darkest or anything like that. It just would be too much work to constantly rearrange these, and if I'm honest, it's really only like, you know, 2 pages, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm not really buying any more ink pads other than the Distress ones that come out. The only reason why I have some of these others was because I got some grab boxes and they were in there. So if we head to the greens, and that's basically it. So I'll just go through and add the rest of these in, and those will be pretty much done. And then I just have that little bin of stuff that needs to be cataloged. So I think this is where I am going to leave you today for this update. I hope this encourages you to continue on in your task that you've assigned yourself for this go round, and be sure to check in for the next video when you are done. Thank you so much for joining me, and until next time, happy crafting and happy organizing.